Differences between the show and the game. The opening of the show starts off with a clip from a TV show from 1968. A scientist talks about the possibility that if the temperature of the planet was to rise just a few degrees, it might result in fungi, i.e. mushrooms, being able to possibly infect human beings as it currently does with ants, turning them essentially into zombies. Then an incredible title animation intro rolls similar to the one from the game, which emphasizes what appears to be some sinister-looking fungi-like growth. The show starts out the morning before the events of the game. We are first introduced to Sarah, Joel's daughter, Joel, and finally Uncle Tommy. We then see the day unfold for Sarah. In the next scene, we see Sarah waiting for Joel to get home from work. This is the point at which the game begins. In both versions, they are eager to celebrate Joel's birthday by giving him a gift. During this scene, the game and the show are not only identical looking, but the dialogue is also word for word at times as well. In both scenes, Sarah ends up falling asleep and Joel takes her to bed. In the show, before Joel gets a chance to do so, he first gets a phone call from Tommy asking him to come and bail him out of jail. Then, in the game, Sarah is awoken by a phone call from a concerned-sounding Uncle Tommy asking for Joel. The phone goes dead. In the show, Sarah is woken up by what sounds like explosions outside. In both the show and the game, Sarah then wanders through the house looking for Joel, both seeing trouble on TV as well as law enforcement activity. Here the differences are subtle. Sarah from the show's attention goes to the neighbor's dog scratching at the door and then tries to take the dog home, but instead finds the neighbors being attacked. Sarah from the game simply finds her father downstairs as the infected neighbor smashes through their door. In both versions, they meet up with Uncle Tommy outside. The live-action version sees the neighbor confronted outside as they both get in the truck, and we see nearly shot-for-shot, beat-for-beat scenes, both once again sharing the same dialogue as well. As they drive through the city, in the game, they are struck by a vehicle. In the show, it looks almost exactly the same, except no collision. Instead, just a few moments later, a passenger jet crashes and hits their vehicle with debris, knocking them out like the car accident from the game. When they awaken, they make their way down the street. In the show, they are separated from Uncle Tommy by a fiery vehicle. In the game, he gets tied up fighting an infected person. In both, he tells Joel and Sarah to go on ahead. In the next scene, in both versions as well, is where Joel runs into a soldier who is ordered to shoot them. It plays out almost identical, although the performances from Pedro Pascal, Nico Parker, and Gabriel Luna in the live-action version are undeniably moving. At this point, this is where the game's title screen intro animation rolls. Both the game and the show pick up 20 years later. However, the show starts off with what appears to be about a day earlier than in the game, showing more of the world Joel is currently living in, which is a Boston that is locked behind a wall. We get to see how society has to deal with the infected, its criminals. We also find out that Joel is moving product. We then get to see a sequence with Tess trying to negotiate her own release from a rival group who has her in captivity, just as his explosion goes off, allowing her to get free. But only for a moment, as she is instantly taken into custody by the authorities. We are then given our first look and introduction to Ellie, who is being held captive. Next we see Joel inquiring whether or not his brother Tommy has been heard from, as he is now overdue. Joel finds out his last location before leaving. Tess meets up with him. At this point, both the game and the show are once again largely in sync. In the game, Tess and Joel are after Robert for guns. In the show, they are looking for Robert for a car battery. In the live-action version, we're then introduced to Marlene and the Fireflies, a group of rebels fighting against the authorities. At this point in the game, you are making your way to Robert with Tess. In the show, we get to see Marlene have a conversation with Ellie. In the game, you eventually catch up with Robert and his crew, and after a prolonged fight, you discover that he no longer has your guns and in fact sold them to Marlene and the Fireflies. In the show, you happened upon Robert and his crew who have already been dispatched by the Fireflies, and realize the battery is no good anyhow. Marlene makes a deal with Joel and Tess for them to take Ellie and deliver her to the other members of the Fireflies. Joel and Ellie then travel to a place and rest until Tess returns, at which point they leave and find their way outside of the wall. Unfortunately, they are discovered by the authorities. As they are being arrested, they are tested to make sure they are not infected. As they are testing Ellie, she decides to attack the soldier with a knife. In the game, the extra soldier is taken out right here by Tess, while Joel finishes the first one off. In the show, Joel has a flashback to when his daughter was first killed, and he attacks the soldier, finishes him off. Then in both versions, Tess notices that the scanner has what appears to be a positive result for the virus, prompting Ellie to simply show a wound, tell everybody it was 3 weeks old, and that she's not infected. Their conversation is cut short when approaching soldiers and vehicles show up in the show, and in the game, they also realize bad guys are coming and they got to move on as well. But that's pretty much it. At this point in the show, we see them slip through the fence. A radio appears on screen and plays a song that would indicate trouble, and then we get one last look at the environment they're heading off into, which looks certainly ominous as the credits roll for the show. In the game, obviously, you're making your way away from the soldiers as they're looking for you, and that's pretty much where it wraps up for both the game and the show, episode 1. The interesting thing is that the runtime for both this section of the game and the show is roughly about the same. It's about an hour and 10 minutes. If you want to watch that section of the game, go ahead and click this box here. But yeah, it's an awesome show. That's it, episode 1, The Last of Us. Highly recommend it. You should get HBO Max. You should watch the show. Until next time, thanks for watching. Share, like, subscribe. Peace out.